Good morning. This video lecture is mainly meant for third year mechanical engineering students of 2017 regulation, and the subject title is automobile engineering and the subject code is ME 8091. So what is the topic of this video lecture? So this video lecture mainly meant for the unit 5 titled alternative energy sources. So let me see what are all the alternative energy sources which can be the best alternative for the conventional fuels which is used in our automobiles. So broadly, automobiles are classified into two types. So one is petrol vehicles and diesel vehicles. Apart from this, electrical vehicles are also commercially available, but broadly we are focusing on these two engines, so petrol engines and diesel engines. So what are all the alternative fuels available for these engines? So these kind of alternative fuels are only focused in this video lecture. So let me begin the topic. So before going into the content, so we are going to see here, so what is the course outcome for this unit? So as this unit is the fifth unit of the syllabus, so this outcome is course outcome 5, so which is CO5. So upon completion of this course, a student can able to predict possible alternative sources of energy for ICE engines. So what are all the possible alternative sources? So alternate in the sense, so we have to replace the conventional fuels like petrol or diesel. So a student can predict what are all the possible alternative sources for these conventional fuels. And this is mainly meant for internal combustion engines, right? So what are the contents we are going to see in this video lecture are natural gas, LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, biodiesel and bioethanol, hydrogen, fuel cells, electric and hybrid vehicles, engine modifications for alternate fuels, performance and emission characteristics of alternate fuels. In these broad content, so already we have seen for both third year A and third year B, so we had seen a major introduction about natural gas, LPG, and preparation of biodiesel with by transesterification process, and we had seen electric and hybrid vehicles too for model examination. But although in this lecture, I just giving some recap about the above mentioned alternate fuels. So we are going to see from natural gas itself. Okay. So next we are going to the content. So first one, introduction. So what is meant by alternative fuel? So as I said in the previous slide, the alternate fuels are those which could be the best alter. So best alter in the sense it could be in on the basis of performance, engine performance, emission, and feasibility of getting those vehicles. Those fuels. So which could be the best alter for conventional fuels. So conventional fuels in the sense, so currently we are using major fuels as a petrol and diesel. So these fuels are called as conventional fuels. So for these conventional fuels, what will be the possible alternative? So that kind of fuels are called as alternative fuels and mainly meant for IC engines. So next one, what is the need? So why we are going for alternative fuels? So concerning the emissions, in conventional fuels, we all know that the emission norms are frequently changing for 4 years as once. So for every 4 years, our Bharat stage norms will be updating its standard for emissions. So concerning the emissions in the sense, conventional fuels will emit so a lot of exhaust gases. As you know earlier, we had seen in class itself, so hydrocarbons, so carbon monoxide, NOx emissions, and particulates, sulfur contents, these are considered to be hazardous for human being and environments. So such emissions are concerned in this topic, so that we are going to alter these conventional fuels with alternate fuels and increasing more number of vehicles demanding more fuel. So day by day, there will be a huge increasing in the number of vehicles, so which demands more fuel. So more fuel in the sense, more emission and more environmental pollutions, right? The next point is crude oil and petroleum products will become scarce and costly. So we all know we are using the fuels, petrols and diesels are refined from crude oil. So these crude oil we are importing from other countries. So like UAE countries, so where they are having oil wells. So we are importing those crude oil from other countries, and we are refining and getting petroleum and diesels. And for the increasing number of vehicles in upcoming years, so these crude oil and petroleum products will become scarce. So scarce in the sense it will deplete. So we can't get these crude oil from those wells within 100 to 200 years. So in 100 to 200 years, upcoming years, so there will be a major scarcity of crude oil in those wells, so oil wells. So that these crude oil will become more costlier, and the major thing is large percentage of crude oil has been imported from other countries. So as I said earlier, so crude oil, so we don't have much potential oil wells, so that we can extract these crude oil in our country. So we are importing these crude oil from UAE nations. So these are the major causes and major points, so that we are going to that we are this puts us to get alternate fuels. So these are the need for alternate fuels. So these are the points concerning about the need for alternate fuels than conventional fuels. So what are the problems in our country while adapting these alternate fuels? So lack of distribution points. So nowadays we are having petrol bunks where we will get petrol and diesel in a single bunk. So we are having petrol bunks at 2 kilometers, every 2 kilometers in intervals. So but in case of alternate fuels, so there will be a lack of distribution points. So this is the major point. And second one is reluctancy among people to buy such alternate fuels. So reluctancy in the sense people are hesitating to get those alternate fuels. So as for past 50 to 60 decades, we are using these petrol and diesel as our main fuels for our vehicles. So a sudden change for these conventional fuels, people are going to hesitate to buy these alternate fuels. So they are having some hesitation to get these fuels, and transfer of alternate fuels is slow. So as far as we are getting petrol and diesel with a easy transfer mode, so we can get in petrol bunks, so it can be refilled once the petrol bunk is run off with petrols and diesels. So that will be a easy mode of transfer in these conventional fuels. But in case of alternate fuels, the transfer rate is low, and it will take more costlier, and it's a tedious process. Tedious in the sense it's an extreme process to transfer those alternate fuels. And last, this is the major point in our country. So there will be a modification requirement in an existing engine system. So in our conventional vehicles, so as of now, we are using vehicles are designed for fueled with petrol or diesel only. So in case if you are going for alternate fuels, our engine design should be modified in order to cope with these alternate fuels. So these are the major problems in our country to adapt for this alternate fuel. And now, so what are all the type of alternate fuels in use or commercially available till now? So as we had seen in the content itself, natural gas, liquefied petroleum gas, biodiesel, bioethanol, hydrogen, fuel cells, battery operated vehicles or electric vehicles. So in these topics, I'm just going to boycott this battery operated vehicles and electric vehicles. So we had seen a much needed lecture in our class itself. So I'm going to concentrate in these 5 alternate fuels only. So the very first alternate fuel is natural gas. So natural gas, what is meant by natural gas? So the name itself implies the gas we can extract naturally. So without any processing or without any external source, we are getting these gas naturally. So that's why it is named as a natural gas. And what are the contents in these natural gas? So natural gas is a mixture of 60 to 95% of methane. So CH4. So this is the chemical formula for methane with a small amount of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and helium. So these combinations are combined together to form a natural gas. So where we can find these natural gas? So these natural gas we can get or we can dig it from gas bearing river beds. For example, in our district, so we are having Kaveri river basins. So you all know about these river basins, ONGCs. So that is the company, they are extracting methane and hydrocarbons by digging up to 4,000 meters or 5,000 meters inside from the Earth's surface, and they are extracting these methane and hydrocarbons. So these are natural gas availability in our state or in our district. So these natural gas are found in large in a potential quantity in those bearing, which means gas bearing river beds. So wherever you can find a river beds, so there will be a stream flow of water. So that condition is called as river beds. We can get these natural gases in those river beds. So by digging up to 4,000 to 5,000 meters, so from the Earth's surface, we can get these methane and hydrocarbon. So after extraction, there will be a sand containment. So from the extracted gas, there will be some sand particles sticked with these extracted gases. So that should be removed. So after removal, that sand-free gases are called as casing head gas. So once we dig it out and extracted these natural gases, and we are going to clear the sand containment. So sand particles are there. We are going to remove. Such sand-free gases are called as casing head gas. And next, further, it is processed to filter. Here only we can get petrol and gasoline. So this casing head gas is further processed to filter petrol or gasoline. So and then it is called as dry gas. Once we filtered petrol and gasoline from casing head gas, so such gas is called as a dry gas. So here natural gas we can broadly classified it into 2 types. So one is CNG, so which is compressed natural gas, and second one is LPG, so liquefied petroleum gas. So in CNG, so this gas is in the form of vapor state or gaseous phase. So here LPG, this gas is in the form of liquid state. But both these gases, even in gaseous phase or liquid phase, it should be under some pressure containment. So it should be under pressurized vessel or pressurized container under 16 to 25 bar in case of CNG, and 70 to 210 bar of pressure in case of LPG at a common temperature of 160 degree Celsius. So Here we are going to see about advantages and disadvantages of natural gases. Um, for in this upcoming slides, we are first we are going to see about the list of various alternate fuels first with their advantages and disadvantages. After that, we are going to see how these alternate fuels are fed into ICE engines. So that's the potential content of this lecture. So first we are going to see a brief introduction about all the alternate fuels, and after that we are going to see how these alternate fuels are feed into the IC engines, right? In this case, this lecture was prepared. So here, advantages and disadvantages of natural gases. So NGs in the sense natural gases. So what all its advantages? The octane number is 110. So for it's the octane number of natural gas is 110, which is a greater number. So it is very good fuel for spark ignition engines. So we know ICE engines can be broadly classified into two types: spark ignition and compression ignition. So spark ignition engines are considered we are going to use spark to get the combustion, and these engines are also called as petrol engines. So these natural gases are mainly meant, or it's a good fuel for spark ignition engines. So before going to the next point, so we should know about the octane number. So we should have a clear definition about octane number. So what is meant by octane number? So octane number is nothing but it's a measure of a fuel, how much it is going to prevent, how much it's going to resist the engine knocking. So engine knocking is nothing but pre-ignition. So once we all know, in case of four-stroke SI engines, that will be a four strokes. So one is intake stroke, and second one is compression stroke, and third one is combustion. Last one is exhaust stroke. In compression stroke, so if the octane number is lower, if a fuel is having lower octane number, in case of compression stroke itself, it starts to ignite. So that is called as pre-ignition. So we are going to we have to get the ignition at the end of the compression stroke only. So if the octane number is lower, so the engine the fuel will be more favorable for pre-ignition condition. So that only spark ignition engine should have octane number with a greater number. So octane number of a fuel should have more in case of SI engine fuels. So petrol is having higher octane number. So in such case, natural gas having octane number is 110, right? So that we can use this LPG, this natural gas is a good fuel for SI engine. And second point is these natural gases emits lower emissions. So here we are just briefly explaining. So what are the what are the advantages and disadvantages at the end of this lecture. So we have a topic called performance and emission characteristics. There we can elaborately see what all the emissions. So particularly carbon monoxide, hydrocarbon, and NOx, sulfur emissions. So we can see with numbers. So here we are just uh, seeing the briefly the advantages. So that I just mentioned here, simple. It's a low emission. So it natural gas emits low emission, and these natural gases we can get worldwide. It's abundant. So abundant in the sense we can get. As we say, as we see in the previous slide, we can get it from river basins. So wherever we can see river basins, we can dig it up to 4,000 to 5,000 meters, and we can get these natural gases. So moreover, we can get these natural gases in all river basins. So we have to pre-process. We have to forecast whether that river basin is having potential natural gases. So that's all separate parts. We are not going to. That's it. So in our Kaveri basin, we can get methane and hydrocarbon as a natural gas. So likewise, we have to forecast. We can't get all. We can't get natural gases in all river basins. We have to forecast whether those river beds are capable of bearing these natural gases. So we have to forecast. And what are the disadvantages? So the energy density is low. So energy density in the sense a particular amount of fuel, a particular amount of natural gas. Each fuel is having its own energy density. So once we can burn, so how much of energy it will uh, provide. So that is called as energy density. So this natural gas is having lower energy density, and because of lower energy density, its performance would be low. And we need large pressurized tank to store these natural gases. So in previous slide, we had seen these natural gases be contained in two forms. One is natural gas, one is gaseous phase and liquid phase. For both phases, we need some pressurized tank to store these natural gas. And refueling is a slow process. Once the fuel will be used and we have to refuel it, it will be a slow process. So these are the advantages and disadvantages of natural gas. And next, so CNG and LPG. So in the previous introduction, we had seen the natural gas, and here we are going to see the broad classification of the natural gas. We are going to see separately the two phases of the natural gas. So CNG, we had seen compressed natural gas, and LPG is a liquefied petroleum gas. So first we are going to see CNG. So this point explains the previous slides. So natural gas, we can get it from riverbeds and can be compressed. So the gas we had extracted from the riverbeds and we can compress it. So such compressed gases are called as CNG, compressed natural gas. So the gas we had extracted. So what all the gas? So like methane. So not all the gas. So methane and hydrocarbons. So these gases we can extract from the riverbeds. So we can compress these natural gas. Such compressed state of gas is called as CNG. So the name itself implies it's a compressed natural gas. So we can use these CNG in petrol driven cars. So how could we use these CNG in petrol driven cars? So we have to go for engine modifications. So in conventional petrol cars, so the engine is designed only for petrol fuel. So the fuel should be we can feed petrol as a fuel in those petrol driven cars. But how could we use CNG in these petrol cars? So for that we need some modification. So what are the modifications we need to use CNG in the petrol cars? So how could we use? So these explanations are coming in the upcoming slides. So there will be a topic called engine modifications. In content itself, I had told. So after getting these brief introduction about alternate fuels, we have two more topics. So engine modifications and performance and emission characteristics. In those engine modification, we can see how CNG can be used in petrol driven cars. So for that, we need some conversion kit. So we can see in that slide, right? So such CNG propelled vehicles possesses lower emission. So when compared to the petrol driven vehicles, these CNG vehicles having so emits lower emission. So these the table will clearly explain so what difference between the petrol vehicles and the CNG vehicles emission. So difference between the emission so emitted by petrol vehicle and the CNG vehicles. So here the pollutants. So major pollutants we know carbon monoxide, hydrocarbon, and oxides of nitrogen. We can call it as a NOx emission. So first we are in this column. So petrol cars with catalytic converter. So we know about catalytic converter. We had seen in the unit 2 itself. So catalytic converter is a device which absorbs these pollutants, these harmful gases, and it can emit a fewer amount of these gases to the atmosphere. We had seen what all the reactions inside these catalytic converter in the previous classes itself. So we don't go much about this. So just here, so we are going to see the petrol car with catalytic converter and CNG vehicles with catalytic converter. So carbon monoxide, here we are going to see, so how to measure. So it's a carbon monoxide, for example, carbon monoxide, gram per kilometer. For per kilometer, how many grams of carbon monoxide is emitted by these petrol car and CNG CNG cars. So here for carbon monoxide, per kilometer, so 0.92 gram of CO a petrol car can emit. In this CNG case, it's fewer, very lower than petrol cars. Only 0.05 gram per kilometer of carbon monoxide a CNG car can emit. So in case of hydrocarbon, petrol car can emit 0.36 gram per kilometer. In the same case, CNG can emit only 0.24 gram per kilometer. So for oxides of nitrogen or a NOx emission, a petrol car can emit 0.25 gram per kilometer. In the same way, CNG is emitting more than petrol variant. So carbon monoxide and hydrocarbon is lower than petrol vehicles, but only NOx is higher in case of these two comparisons. So which means so CNG vehicles emit more NOx emissions than petrol vehicles. And I hope you would understand the different comparison between the emission, these major emissions between petrol and CNG vehicles. So next, LPG. So the second form of natural gas, which is in the liquid phase. So liquefied natural gas. So this is also called as gasoline. So it's a mixture of petroleum natural gas. So the liquefied natural gas is also called as gasoline. So this is we are using it in our vehicles as a petrol. So liquefied petroleum gas, or the gas we can compress in the form of liquid is called as LPG. That is called as gasoline. So gasoline is nothing but it's the other name of petrol. So in case of United Kingdom, so London, they are using the term called petrol. US. So US in United States, they are using this term as gasoline, and British, so UK, they are using the term called petrol. So we are following the British norms. So we are telling this as a petrol. So both gasoline and the petrol are same. So what kind of country? So they are having individual terminologies to nomenclate these lot of exams we could see here. Gasoline is the US term, and British term we are telling it as a petrol. So that's the difference. There is no major difference between gasoline and petrol. So here, so there are two types of LPGs we could use. So one is propane and propane powered, and second one is butane powered. So sometimes we could use both the mixture of propane and butane. We can use. So these LPGs are widely used in buses, cars, and trucks. So these compressed gases are cooled. So actually this is in the form of gas. So we are going to condensate it. So we know about condensation. So we are going to cool these gases to convert into liquid phase. So that is called as the conversion, phase conversion. So gaseous to liquid conversion. That's called as condensation. So if we cool these compressed gas, we can get the liquid, which means the gaseous phase is converted into liquid phase. This liquid is kept in a pressurized tank, as we see it in earlier slides itself. both the phases, even gaseous phase or liquid phase, this liquid or this natural gas should be kept in a pressurized tank with a seal, with a proper sealing. So once there will be a poor sealing, these gases or these LPG or these CNGs uh, would leak into the environment. So that would be a hazard for the environmental issues. So we should seal it properly, right? So and then here 90% of American vehicles are propelled with LPG, so propane powered LPG. So 90% of American vehicles are propelled with LPG, which is powered by propane. And here, uh, after we have seen a brief introduction about LPG and CNGs, here we are going to see the comparison between petrol and LPG. As I said, LPG, it's a gas. Petrol is in the form of liquid. So the natural gas we can convert into gaseous state into liquid state. So that's why it is called as liquefied petroleum gas (LPG). And here we are going to compare the petrol with LPG. So we may seen some vehicles is having cylinders at the back of their vehicles. So that is called as LPG cylinders. Those cars, those vehicles are fueled with these LPG fuels. So these LPG vehicles should need some conversion kit to run over petrol vehicles. So we can use LPG in a petrol vehicle, but we need some conversion kit. So which is engine modifications. We require some engine modifications. So here we are going to see about comparison between petrol and LPG. So the fuel consumption in petrol engine is less. So fuel consumption is nothing but how much of fuel a vehicle can consume for a per kilometer. So that measure is called as fuel consumption. So here, when compared to LPG, the fuel consumption is in petrol is lower. So compared to petrol, so running the engine on LPG results in around 10 percentage. So with comparison with petrol, LPG needs 10 percentage more fuel than petrol. So the petrol has odor. So odor in the sense smell. Petrol is having its own distinct smell, and for LPG, it's odorless. It's a smell-less fuel. So octane rating of petrol is 81. So octane rating of LPG is 110. Here it's a major difference. The octane number. So as I said earlier, so the measure of fuel to resist the engine knocking, which is pre-ignition. So pre-ignition in the sense before ignition before within the compression stage itself. So here petrol is having 81 octane rating and octane rating of LPG is 110. So which means the knocking tendency is more in LPG when compared to the petrol. So petrol engine is not as smooth as LPG engines. So we might have come across the petrol engines and LPG, so cylinders, so the LPG vehicles. So there will be a difference in the vehicle noise. So in petrol vehicles, we could hear some noise, but in case of LPG vehicles, the noise is lower, right? So petrol engine is not as smooth as LPG engine, LPG engine. So due to high octane rating, the combustion of LPG is smoother and knocking is eliminated. So here, this is what I had told already. So with a higher rating of octane number, the engine knocking will be eliminated. So this is the only reason why LPG vehicles are having less noise when compared to the petrol vehicles. In order to increase octane number, petrol required lead additives. So here, this is an interesting point. We can increase the octane number of the petrol, but only we have to through the means we have to add some additives. So we have to add on some lead. So lead is a you had known it's a chemical. We have to add this lead. So we may have seen in some petrol bunks. Here we can provide leaded vehicles or unleaded vehicles. So leaded in the sense the petrol is mixed with lead. So once we mix lead with petrol, we can get lower knocking, which means its octane number would increase. LPG is lead free with high octane number. So naturally LPG is having a lead free fuel with a high octane number. So here in our country, leaded petrols having boycotted, which means government norms would say leaded petrols should not be uh, feed into the engines, as these emissions would create more hazard when compared to unleaded petrol. So now we are using only unleaded petrols mostly. In our state, we are using mostly unleaded petrol. The next, advantages and disadvantages of LPG. So first advantages, so lower carbon content than petrol. When compared to petrol, this LPG is having lower carbon content. So lower carbon content means the carbon monoxide emission would be smaller. So LPG can be mixed with air in all temperature. So during mixing, during air and fuel mixture, so we need carburetors. So the purpose of using carburetors is we have to mix the air with fuel, so that air fuel mixture will be fed into the engine cylinders. There we can get the combustion of the air fuel mixture. So LPG can be mixed with air in all temperatures. So this is a better advantage. So, and as we know, LPG is having high anti-knocking property. So, knocking. So, as I said earlier, fuel with having more octane number is having anti-knocking property. So, LPG's octane number we know 110, when compared to petrol, it's only 80. So, the LPG is having high anti-knocking property. So, here, what are the disadvantages? So, ignition temperature is higher than petrol. So the ignition temperature, in the sense, a minimum temperature required to ignite the fuel, called as the ignition temperature. So the ignition temperature is higher when compared to petrol. So we need to feed more. This LPG requires more temperature to ignite itself. So increased vehicle weight due to heavy pressure cylinders. We know the LPG powered vehicles require cylinders. So LPG should be contained inside the cylinder. So these cylinders would increase the weight of the vehicle. So the vehicle weight should be increased in case of LPG, as these gases should be contained inside the cylinder, and the cylinder weight would increase the overall weight of the vehicle. So that's a major advantage. So the increased weight would disturb the aerodynamics of the vehicle itself. So the special fuel feed system. So this is what I said. The special fuel feed system. It is called as that alternator kit. So we need some kit to alternate the petrol vehicles into the LPG fueled vehicle. The third one, it's the major topic. We are going to see it's biodiesel. So this is the promising alternate fuels among countries which are under research, which will be the possible alternate for diesel. So compression ignition engines. So biodiesel. So bio, the term bio, which refers green. So it's a green, which means it's environmental friendly. It should be environmental friendly. So biodiesel, in the sense, So blending of vegetable oil or animal fat based oil. So either vegetable oil or animal fat based oil. So vegetable oil, we know oil which we can extract from vegetable. So we might know about sunflower oil, corn oil, uh, castor oil. So these kinds of oils are called as vegetable oil or animal fat based oil, either this one or this. So when mixed with diesel or blended with diesel, we can get biodiesel. So we can't barely blend these vegetable oil or animal fat oil with diesel directly. We should go some process. In the next slide, I can explain what all the process for extracting biodiesel. So we can't simply mix this vegetable oil to the diesel directly. So it won't work. So we have to go some experimentation. So that is called as transesterification. I will explain in the upcoming slides. So this is called as biodiesel, which is the blending of vegetable oil or animal fat based oil with diesel. So here biodiesel we can represent in terms called B100, B20, B5, B2. These are the major blending which we can use in vehicles. So here in B100, B20, B5, B2, in these nomenclature, the term B represents the amount of biodiesel in that fuel. So in here B100 blend. So B100 blend in the sense the B means biodiesel. How much percentage of biodiesel is available in that particular fuel? So B100 in the sense that fuel is having 100% of biodiesel, right? So for B20, it's 20% of biodiesel. Remaining 80% would be the blended, the base fuel, which would be the diesel. So 20% of biodiesel and 80% of pure diesel. And B5 in the sense 5% of biodiesel and 95% of pure diesel. In B2 blend, that mixture contains only 2% of biodiesel and 98% of diesel, pure diesel. So these are all the major blends we could use in our vehicles. So why we should go for these blends only? So why we can't go for B98 or B25? So these are all the best possible or optimized blends we could use, which we got from research works. So researchers had told these blends are best optimal, which is the optimized blends for the ICE engines, so that we could use these blends as a major content. So B20 blend is widely used. Among these blend also, we are using B20 blend as in a wider range in diesel engines with fewer modifications. So here modification implies that that engine should require some lower amount of modification. As diesel engines are designed only for fueled with diesel. So in case if we are going to use this biodiesel in the diesel engine, we need some fewer modification. In case of B20 blend, if we want to use B100 blend, we need a major engine modification, because there will be a comparison between diesel and pure diesel and blended diesel, so blended biodiesel. So B20 blend is merely equal to the properties of pure diesel, but in case of B100, the properties would change in higher numbers, so that B100 blend requires major engine modification. And from 2005, the use of biodiesel has been increasing all over the world. So this biodiesel concept evolved in the ICE engine era from 2005. So from the beginning of 2005 itself, ICE engines are fed with these biodiesels successfully. Right. Here, this dot, we are going to see how a biodiesel can be prepared. So this is the process flow chart for the preparation of biodiesel. So for the very first step, we have to choose a suitable vegetable oil. This vegetable oil would be any kind. So this is the research part. So what would be the optimized oil? We can get a good blend of biodiesel. That research is going on. Here, the vegetable oil would be any kind. So for example, if we can take, for example, if we use castor oil, so we take castor oil, and the castor oil should be blended with methanol and potassium hydroxide. Here, this is this part. So this part, so wait. So this part is the transesterification part. So before going to the process, so first we have to know about what is meant by transesterification. So for that, I have to go for next slide. So transesterification. So it's a reversible reaction. It's a chemical process. So here we have to mix the reactants. So here fatty acids or alcohol and a catalyst. So alcohol in the sense methanol or ethanol. We can use methanol or ethanol. So and catalyst. So catalyst is a base. It's a potassium hydroxide or sodium hydroxide, NaOH or KOH, any kind of catalyst. So this catalyst is mainly meant for to speed up the reaction. So in this transesterification, so the oil before blending the vegetable oil, we have to add alcohol and a catalyst. We have to mix it and we have to heat it up to 600 to 700 degrees Celsius, and then we have to blend the vegetable oil into the mixture. So a strong base or a strong acid can be used as a catalyst. As I told, catalyst is mainly meant for to speed up the reaction. So the end products, what will be the end product of this transesterification is a raw biodiesel and a raw glycerol. You can get two major products, byproducts. So one is biodiesel, pure biodiesel, and a raw glycerol. So this process is called as transesterification. Now we can see the preparation of biodiesel. So here we are going to take any kind of vegetable oil. Before blending this vegetable oil, we have to mix methanol. So this is the alcohol we are taking. So we can use ethanol too, and potassium hydroxide. This is the catalyst. So we have to mix these two, alcohol and catalyst. So and then here we are heating this mixture up to a range of 500 to 600 degrees Celsius. Then we have to mix vegetable oil with that mixture. So this process, this combined process is called as transesterification. So after mixing vegetable oil with this heated mixture, so we have to simply place the mixture in the beaker for 1 or 2 days, which means it will take 24 hours. Here we could see the phase separation. So after placing that mixture to cool down or to settle down in a room temperature, so after 24 hours or 48 hours, which means 1 or 2 days, we could see there will be a two phase. So the first layer, the first phase is having the glycerol phase. So that we could filter the glycerol out, and the second phase, the lower phase, which means the first phase is having glycerol, and the second phase we can get the crude biodiesel. The crude in the sense there will be some contaminants, some impurities over there. So we could filter the biodiesel. So the filter process is called water washing. We have to wash with the water, so we can get a after washing, we have to go for drying process. We have to dry the biodiesel, and then only we can get a pure biodiesel. So this is the preparation of biodiesel. I hope you all understand this process. So first we have to take vegetable oil. Before mixing the vegetable oil, we have to trans-esterify the methanol and the potassium hydroxide. Even we can use ethanol, any kind of alcohol. So majorly methanol and ethanol are widely used with potassium hydroxide or sodium hydroxide. So any kind of catalyst, we have to mix this and we have to heat it up. So in this mixture, we have to add the vegetable oil. So this mixture have to settle down in a room temperature. We have to allow it for cool. So that we can get two phases. The first phase in the beaker is called as glycerol. We have to remove it out, and the second phase we can get is a crude biodiesel. After the filtering process, the crude in the sense it's having some impurities. We have to wash it out and dry. So and then we can get a pure biodiesel. So this is the preparation process flow chart for preparing a biodiesel. So this is trans-esterification. We have seen, and now we are going to see the what are the properties of biodiesel. So as a biodiesel, so it's having a better lubrication properties. The lubrication is more in this biodiesel. So the flash point of biodiesel is greater than 130 degrees Celsius. The flash point, probably you know about flash point you have seen in thermal engineering in your previous semester. So flash point of the biodiesel is greater than 130 degrees Celsius, which is higher than petroleum and gasoline. The density. So the density of this biodiesel is 0.88 gram per cubic capacity. 0.88 gram per cubic centimeter. Sorry, there will be a no sulfur content. So these are all the major properties of biodiesel. So the next one. So as we are going to see the alternate fuel, the next alternate fuel is ethanol. It's also called as alcohol. So the oil, the term, the chemical which is having the ending oil, we are broadly saying it as an alcohol family. So ethanol is one type of an alcohol family, ethanol, methanol. So vehicles are using these alcohols as a best alternate for conventional fuels. So here we are going to see ethanol. So it is also called as gasohol. So the petrol or gasoline, the petrol, if we add this alcohol with petrol, that mixture is called as gasohol. So the mixture of 90% of petrol and 10% of alcohol in a blend, the major percentage would be a petrol, 90% of petrol, and the remaining 10% we can add ethanol, which is the 10% of alcohol. What are the two major blends we could use probably in ICE engines? So E85. So 85 E in the sense ethanol. In case if we use methanol as an additive, here we have to use M. So M85, M10. E85 in this blend, 85% of ethanol, as we had seen in the biodiesel blend. So B. So we are using we are using the term B, but here we are using the term E, which represents the blend, ethanol blend. So 85% of ethanol with 15% of petrol, and here E10. So 10% of ethanol plus 90% of petrol. So these are the two major optimized blends we could use in ICE engines. So Brazil is the country with 5 million automobiles fueled or propelled with these alcohol, which means alcohol propelled vehicles. So they are using nearly 5 million vehicles. So how we can prepare this ethanol? So usually alcohols we can get it from the fermentation process. So the fermentation it's a chemical process. Likewise, the transesterification we had seen in the preparation of biodiesel. So we might have you students had come across this process in your high school itself. So I hope you don't need much explanation about this fermentation process. So it's like a filtration process. So the fermentation we have to use bacteria like um, mm, yeast, which is majorly used in the preparation of breads. So these fermentation includes the use of such bacteria in sugar. So uh, raw material which is having a major sugar content, we can ferment it to get alcohol. So this is the process. Fermentation is the process to get alcohol from sugar and grains. So that raw material should have a potential sugar content. That raw material only we could ferment with yeast. So much of it made from sugar beets, sugar cane, and cellulose. These materials will have a potential sugar content so that we can ferment it to get alcohol. So and then this is the simple preparation process. The fermentation is the process, and here the cost is too high due to the manufacturing and processing. The fermentation process is somewhat costlier. So for that sake, the cost of this alcohol is also high. So hydrocarbon emission is lower when compared to the gasoline. When we compare a gasoline propelled vehicle with this ethanol blend vehicles, the hydrocarbon emission is lower in this ethanol propelled vehicle. And the fifth one, it's a major alternate fuel, or we can say it's another form of alternate fuel for ICE engines. It's called as hydrogen. So major future. So the hydrogen is having major future. We can get or we can form or we can produce hydrogen potential in potential numbers, which is available. Simply we can get it from water. So this hydrogen is having a better scope to be used as a better alternative for conventional fuels. So because the preparation of hydrogen, we can get simply from we can break the water into two compounds like hydrogen and oxygen. As we know, water is H2O. Its chemical formula is H2O. It's two molecules of hydrogen and one molecule of oxygen. We called it as higher water. So we can break that molecules to two separate molecules. So from that separation, we can easily get hydrogen. So this hydrogen is having better scope for using as an alternate fuel. So its combustion product is water again. So this is the major advantages of using hydrogen as an alternate fuel. So here, after combustion, so the combustion cycle, we can get as an exhaust or as a product of water. Water, it's not as harmful than any other emissions like hydrocarbons or carbon monoxide or NOx emission. So we can get water as a byproduct. So the density of hydrogen in both phase, we can as like LPG, natural gas, we can store hydrogen in both phase, in gaseous phase and liquid phase. So in both phase, hydrogen possesses low density. It should be stored in cryogenic container. So this is the major tedious process. So we should contain this hydrogen only in a cryogenic container. So cryogenic, this term refers, it's a temperature, it's a cryogenic temperature. So cryogenic in the sense the temperature which should be equal or less than minus 150 degrees Celsius. So this temperature, so this represents the cryogenic point. So we should use such type of container to store this hydrogen. High self-ignition temperature, as hydrogen is naturally is having a high self-ignition temperature. So it requires a fever temperature, a small minimal temperature to ignite itself. So that hydrogen is also called as a flammable gas. So scientists had named it as a flammable air. So hydrogen, it's a highly flammable gas. So these two are tedious in case of hydrogen. And then, so how we could use hydrogen in ICE engines? So especially in spark ignition engines, uh, we can adopt three methods to induce hydrogen into the ICE engines, which is a spark ignition engine mainly. So by manifold induction, this is one method, and second one is by direct introduction of hydrogen, so H2 in the sense hydrogen into the cylinder, so cylinders of engines, and third one is by supplementing to petrol. So we could use hydrogen as a supplement, which is a support petrol for any other fuel like petrol or diesel. So these three methods we can adapt to induce hydrogen or to introduce hydrogen into the ICE engines. So we can see it elaborately. So before the introduction methods of hydrogen into the ICE engines, we have to see how hydrogen is prepared. So there are a lot of experiments are there to prepare hydrogen. So this method, electrolysis of water. This is uh, widely used experiments to get hydrogen. So it's a simple process. This is widely used to get hydrogen in a potential quantity. So here, electrolysis, the term, the electrolysis, the electro represents the electrons, which is current, and lysis means separation. So we are going to separate the water. So with the help of current. So we know water is having two molecules of hydrogen and one molecule of oxygen. We are going to separate these two hydrogen and oxygen separately. So with the help of current. So that's given here. Water is broken into hydrogen and oxygen. So how it is done? So we can see the setup here. So we have to take a beaker containing water, hydrogen, and we have to add some acid. So HCl or NaCl acid to make the water to be a good conductor of electricity. So first of all, we need a beaker containing water which is acidified. Acidified in the sense we have to add HCl or NaCl into the water. We need a 9-volt DC source, power source battery, 9-volt battery, and two electrodes covered with two test tubes. So one test tube is required to collect hydrogen, and one test tube is required to collect oxygen. So these two electrodes are widely used. Electrodes are graphite. So we can use graphite or any other electrode we could use. The positive terminal is connected to one electrode, and negative terminal is connected to another electrode. So once the supply is given to the water, this electrode, which is immersed inside the acidified water, the hydrogen, which is having positive ions, H plus ions, which will be attracted towards this cathode. So cathode is having negative energy, and here in this electrode, oxygen having negative charge, which is attracted towards the anode. Anode is having positive charge. So this is the simplest preparation. So this is the method we are going to break the water into two molecules. As cathode is having negative charge, and here anode is having uh, positive charge. So as cathode is having negative charge, the H plus, the positive and the negative will attract each other. Here the negative and positive will attract each other. So this is the simplest formula we can simplest experiment we can break the water into hydrogen and oxygen. So I hope you would understand this process. So I will recap it. Simple. So we have to take a beaker. We have to add water and we have to add acid in order to acidify the water. So the purpose of acidifying the water, in order to make the water as a good conductor of electricity, we need a 9-volt battery. So those two terminals, positive and negative terminals, should be connected to the two electrodes. Here we are using graphite as electrodes. The positive terminal is connected to one electrode, and negative terminal is connected to another electrode. So while giving supply into the water, the hydrogen having positive ions will be attracted towards the negative electrode, which is cathode, and oxygen molecules having negative charge will be attracted towards the electrode having positive charge. So we know about this attraction, positive and negative attraction. So this is the simplest way of breaking the water into hydrogen and oxygen. This is the widely used experiment. It's called as electrolysis of water to prepare hydrogen. So here we are going to see what are the feeding. So how we can feed hydrogen into IC engines. So the three methods we had seen before the electrolysis. So one is manifold induction, second one is direct introduction of hydrogen in engine cylinders, and third one we can use hydrogen as a supplement, which is a support fuel for conventional fuels. So first one we are going to see about manifold induction. So in manifold induction, so a cold hydrogen. So hydrogen should be in the form of as we seen already, it should be contained in a cryogenic container. So it's under a cold condition. It's introduced through the valve controlled passage. So this cold hydrogen is introduced into the intake manifold of the cylinder through a valve control. So a control valve should be fixed in the passage in order to control the flow of hydrogen into the intake manifold. So the valve is mainly used to reduce the backflash and pre-ignition. So what is mean by backflash? So the hydrogen is having a tendency to get pre-ignite as the ignition temperature is lower for hydrogen, and during transfer of hydrogen into the intake manifold, there would be a possibility of getting backflash. So backflash in the sense mm, uh, the flash would get backfired. So backfired inside the passage, the track itself. So that is called as backflash. So for that purpose, in order to prevent this backflash, we need valve control. And then liquid hydrogen is widely used as energy. Is widely used as energy content in air. Hydrogen is lower. So in this point, I'm going to predict. I'm going to tell liquid hydrogen. So there will be a two form of hydrogen. One is gaseous stage and liquid stage. The liquid hydrogen is widely used as a fuel as the energy content. While we are burning that liquid hydrogen, we could get more energy when compared to the air form of hydrogen. This is for manifold induction. And second type is direct introduction of hydrogen into engine cylinders. So how could we directly feed hydrogen into the engine cylinders? So first hydrogen is stored in a liquid form in the cryogenic container. So cryogenic container we may know it's a container having minus 150 degrees Celsius of temperature. It's called as a cryogenic container. We have to we have to store this hydrogen in that cryogenic container only, because hydrogen should be contained inside that type of container. So we should not store hydrogen in a normal container. It should be stored in a cryogenic container only, which is having minus 150 degrees Celsius of temperature. From that container, we are using a low pressure pump into the small heat exchanger. this hydrogen which is contained in the cryogenic container is pumped with the help of low pressure pump, which will directed into a small heat exchanger, HE in the sense heat exchanger. Here in heat exchanger, that liquid hydrogen is get converted into the gaseous hydrogen, and then we can feed the gaseous hydrogen into the engine cylinder. So let me see how it will work. So this is the layout of the direct hydrogen introduction. As we seen in earlier, this tank is the cryogenic tank. So here the pressure should be maintained at 0.5 atmospheres. And from this tank, with the help of pump, this is a low pressure pump, the liquid hydrogen is pumped into high pressure pump. So here in this way, after the high pressure pump, in this here itself there will be a small heat exchanger. Actually, it's not available here. So here there will be a small heat exchanger. So after this low pressure get converted into high pressure, it is tracked inside the heat exchanger. From the heat exchanger, here in this point only, this liquid hydrogen will get converted into a gaseous hydrogen. And then with the help of here, after the converted gaseous stage hydrogen is feed into the hydrogen injector. So from this injector, we can inject hydrogen into the cylinder. So we can know this is the SI engine with the spark plug, cylinder, piston, and other components of IC engines. We can directly inject this gaseous hydrogen from this point. So this is one type, direct hydrogen introduction from container to low pressure pump to high pressure pump and to small heat exchanger. So this red color part indicates the presence of heat exchanger. From heat exchanger, the liquid hydrogen gets converted into a gaseous stage, and then we can feed the gaseous hydrogen directly into the cylinder. And next one is supplement to petrol. So supplement in the sense we can use hydrogen as a support fuel for conventional fuels, either with petrol or with diesel. So hydrogen can be introduced to ICE engines as a supplement or support fuel. So how we are using this supplement? So this is the basic SI engine setup. So here we are going to use rocker arm and a cam mechanism with a nozzle to introduce hydrogen into the cylinder. So in this conventional ICE engine setup, we are having spark plug, we are having intake manifold, exhaust manifold, combustion chamber, piston. There will be a no modification, but we are using cam profile with nozzle to inject hydrogen via here. So hydrogen is feed into the cylinder head with the help of this passage, and this nozzle will sparkle. Will eject the hydrogen into the combustion chamber. Here we can use how we could use this hydrogen as a supplement. So here we can use the major fuel would be a petrol fuel only. Here we are using hydrogen as a supplement fuel. So that's why we need some this smaller modification in the ICE engine setup. So these are the three major ways we can use hydrogen as a fuel in ICE engines. So here advantages and disadvantages of hydrogen. So major advantages, there will be no hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide emissions. The exhaust is during combustion of hydrogen, we are getting exhaust. We are getting two major byproducts. One is water, H2O. It's not harmful to the environment. Actually, it's required one two, and nitrogen. So into nitrogenous products. So this is somewhat harmful to the environment. But there will be a no major hydrocarbon or carbon monoxide emissions in this. combustion of hydrogen. So fuel leakage is not a pollutant. So once if the fuel is leaked to the environment, it's not a major pollution. Hydrogen is not a pollutant to the environment. And then disadvantage. So major disadvantages are we are in need of heavy and bulky cryogenic containers. So the cryogenic containers we required is a bulky one, and we have to maintain minus 150 degrees Celsius in that container. So volumetric efficiency of this hydrogen is low. Uh, Low in the sense it's a poor one. So volumetric efficiency is poor, and fuel cost is high. So as we have to go for that electrolysis of water, the preparation of hydrogen is somewhat costlier, so that the fuel cost is also high. So high NOx emissions. So as we seen here, the exhaust is two products. One is water and nitrogen, which is the NOx emissions. So there will be a high NOx emission. This NOx is somewhat harmful to the environment. And last one is fuel cells. This is the fuel cell, in the sense we are going to extract power, we are going to extract the voltage from this cells as like batteries. So we are using these fuel cells in battery operated vehicles. So we are using fuel cells instead of batteries. We had already seen in electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. There we are using energy source as batteries, apart from conventional fuels. Here, fuel cell is used to extract current voltage in order to run the electric motor, which is the power source for the electric propelled vehicles. So fuel cells is a 150 years old technology. It's a very old technology, fuel cells. So it's having a potential to provide a cleaner environment, as we are not using any type of fuel, combustible fuels like petrol, diesel, or alcohol, biodiesel, or any other. There is no way for combustion in these electric vehicles. So in electric vehicles, we are going to take the power source from the batteries, and it is converted to the electric motors. Electric motor. From that electric motor, we are getting the torque required for the vehicle motion. So here, in case of fuel cell, it's having potential to provide cleaner environment, as there is a zero emission in these electric vehicles. So the amount of power is based on size of cell. So what will be the size of cell? What will be the type? What kind of type? So as we are using different types of fuel cell, which will be explained in upcoming slides. So on the temperature and pressure of the supply gas. So based on these criteria, we can get variation in power. So a single fuel cell can produce electricity for smaller applications only. So a fuel cell, it's an individual fuel cell can produce electricity for smaller application. A small, we can give an LED bulb or a fluorescent bulb lamps as a load. If we need, as we are concerning about vehicles, alternate fuels, we have to connect these individual fuel cells into in series connection, which means we have to connect more number of fuel cells in series to get more power. So that more power, only with that more power we could achieve the electricity need for that electric motor to run. So here, what are the major parts of fuel cell? A fuel cell would require an anode, a cathode, a catalyst. A catalyst is widely a platinum coated catalyst, and a porous carbon paper covered electrodes. It means this anode and cathode is covered with a porous carbon paper. That thickness of paper would be 4 to 12 sheets. So if you are taking a sheet of paper, so if you are laminating, if you are placing 4 papers one over another, what would be the thickness, or 12 sheets? What would be the thickness we could get? That thickness of porous carbon paper is covered in this anode and cathode. So what are the types of fuel cells we are using? So based on the types of electrodes, so what kind of electrodes we are using and types of fuel. So we would feed different types of fuel to this fuel cell, and we are operating this fuel cell in different temperature. Based on these criteria, the fuel cell uh, will be having different types. So different types of fuel cells we can use on basis of these criteria. So working. So how a fuel cell will work. So here, mm, the arrangement is seen clearly. So from one side, we have to feed the fuel. The fuel would be any kind of fuel. Even we can feed hydrogen, alcohol. So any kind of fuel we can feed here. So from the other side, we have to we have to feed oxygen in this side. So, as we seen in the previous slide, this fuel cell should have two electrodes. So, one is a negative electrode and one is positive electrode. So, which would be a cathode and a anode. And this is the case. So, from the case, we have to insert these two electrodes. And here, this electrode is covered with the that porous carbon paper. And this electrode should be platinum coated. So here, assume that we are here the pressurized hydrogen gas is used as fuel here. So once this fuel is passed here, uh, sorry, a small intervention. So coming back to the working of fuel cell. So here we are using hydrogen, so hydrogen gas as fuel. So which is passed in this side of the container, and we have to feed oxygen from this side. So inside this container, we have two electrodes. So one electrode is positively charged and the other electrode is negatively charged. So these electrodes are covered with platinum, or which is coated with platinum and covered with the carbon porous paper. So once the positively charged hydrogen ions, as we know, hydrogen ions is having positive charge and oxygen ions is having negative charge, enters into the container, which is get stuck, which is going to impact that platinum coated electrode, and from here the hydrogen is split into hydrogen ions and electrons. So hydrogen ions is moved towards this container and electrons is moved towards the electrode, which is passing from here. So the electrons is moving here and to this external circuit and is coming back to this electrode. So here, as oxygen is feeding from this direction, this oxygen is again breaking into two components, having oxygen with the negative ions with electrons. Here, this upcoming hydrogen ions is combined with this oxygen. We are getting water as a byproduct here. It's like electrolysis of water, simple working as a electrolysis of water. So this is how fuel cell uh, is working. So we are going to feed hydrogen. So once the hydrogen is get impact in this electrode, platinum coated electrode, here the hydrogen is breaking into H plus ions and electrons. These electrons is traveling from this electrode to this external circuit, and we are here we are getting uh, 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 the electricity. Here we are getting the voltage. So how much we can get for a single fuel cell? We can get 0.7 volt. So it's not required. It's a minimal amount of voltage to propel a vehicle. So for this case, we have to connect a large number of fuel cells in large numbers in series connection to get more voltage, right? And these electrons will travel to this electrode, and here the oxygen which is entering in this direction is combined with the H plus ions. So from this porous membrane, so via membranes. So this H plus ion travel through this membranes and will get react with this oxygen atoms, and here we can get the products as a water. So this is how a fuel cell works. In this reaction, so from why this it is called as a fuel cell. So we are feeding a fuel to get electricity. So that combined working of this fuel and this electrodes. So that we are collectively called it as a fuel cell. Here we are getting in this circuit we are getting the for a single fuel cell we are getting 0.1 volt. So for more voltage, we have to connect these individual fuel cell in large numbers in series connection. Yes. So this is the topic. So it's an important topic. Uh, till now, we had seen what all the different types of alternate fuels commercially available, and we have broadly looked after how they are prepared. So what all their advantages and disadvantages of different types of alternate fuels. So this topic would cover what all the major modifications required for alternate fuel. As I said earlier, conventional automobiles having engines which is specially designed for petrol or diesel only. In order to use these alternate fuels, we need some engine modifications. So that modifications only we are going to see in this upcoming slides. So after that, the last topic, we are going to see the performance and emission characteristics of different alternate fuels. So let me see what are the engine modifications required for alternate fuels. So before going to see the engine modifications, we should know so what are the modes of alternate fueled vehicles are available. So, so the alternative fuels need these alternative fuels had put the manufacturers to redesign the existing engine design. So as the existing engine is only meant for petrol and diesel variants, in order to use these alternate fuels, the manufacturers should redesign the existing engine design. So these modified engine uh, uh, having once if we alter the engine to cope these alternate vehicles, such vehicles are called as alternate fueled vehicles, AFVs. So there are three different modes of AFVs are available. So one is dedicated single fuel engine. So this engine is common exclusively only meant for alternate fuel only. So we can use any other conventional fuels like petrol or diesel in this engine. So second one is dual fuel engine. So dual in the sense we can use both conventional fuel and alternate fuel. It's like we can use alternate fuel as a supporting fuel, as we see in hydrogen topic. So we could use hydrogen as a supportive fuel to the conventional fuel. So we can use dual fuel engine. And third one is bi-fuel engine. In bi-fuel engine, either we can use conventional fuel or alternate fuel. In this case, we need two containers in vehicle. So one fuel tank is meant for conventional fuel, and another tank is meant for alternate fuel. We have to choose. We have to choose in which fuel the vehicle should run. So for that case, we need a fuel switch as an alternative. It's a part of an alternative kit. So these are the three modes of alternate fuel vehicles are available. So here, so what is the need for engine modification? So we know all the commercial vehicles available are designed for petrol and diesel engine. As petrol and diesel is having their own properties, but alternate fuels are different in many ways when compared to the diesel and petrol. So what all the terms, so in which way they are differed from petrol and diesel. So one is energy content, handling and storage. Energy content in the sense, once we are burning a fuel, so how much energy we could get. So that quantity is called as an energy content. So handling and storage, density would differ. Octane numbers, we know octane numbers, there will be a variation. Calorific value, so this is nothing but energy content. If you burn a vehicle, sorry, if you burn a fuel, so how much of energy we could obtain? That's the value is called as a calorific value. And combustion and detonation properties. So in these ways, an alternative fuel will be different from conventional fuels like petrol and diesel. So as commercially available engines are only designed for petrol, either petrol or diesel engine, we could not use directly this alternate fuel in those design engines. So we need some modification for that process. For that purpose only, we have to modify our engine. So this is the major need for engine modification. So first we are going to see what all the modification we should do for using natural gas. So we can use natural gas in both diesel engine and petrol engine. In case of diesel engine, we have to remove the fuel injector. In diesel engines, we are not having spark plugs. We have only a fuel injector. So a diesel engine should be converted to a spark ignition engine. In the case if you are using natural gas in the diesel engines, we need to remove the fuel injector. We have to replace the fuel injector with the introduction of spark ignition system. Like we are going to modify the diesel engine to the spark ignition engine by removing the fuel injector, by introduction of a spark ignition system with a spark plug, and connecting gas carburetors. As we know, SI engines are equipped with carburetors. In this carburetor only, the air and fuel mixture is done here. So in order to convert the diesel engine to natural gas utilized fueled spark ignition engine, we have to connect a gas carburetor and fitting turbochargers. So turbocharger we had seen in a third unit itself. So you don't need much explanation about this turbochargers. And for petrol engine, so we need some CNG storage tanks. So tanks we have to add in vehicle. So we need some pressure regulators. As it's in the form of compressed state, we need some pressure regulators while introducing this CNGs in the petrol vehicles. We need again gas carburetors. So these are all the modifications we have to go in case if we are using natural gas either in diesel engine or in petrol engine. So for LPG, for liquefied petroleum gas, LPG cylinder, so cylinders, so how we are converting. So this is the layout. I'm saying from the previous slide itself. So how we are converting the petrol fueled vehicle into a LPG fueled vehicle. So this is the in this layout, we can easily understand how a petrol fueled vehicle is converted to a LPG fueled vehicle with the help of alternator kit. So here the LPG propane tank. So it's a propane powered LPG tank is placed in the rear portion of the vehicle. So this is the fuel line. So from this fuel line, there will be a filter. So here a vacuum filter is fixed. So here in this filter, contaminants from this gas, LPG gas, is filtered out, and then it is passed through a regulator. So in this regulator, proper regulation. So as LPG should be contained in a pressurized vehicle, here this regulator is mainly meant for regularizing the pressure. So after from this regulator, it is entered into the propane carburetor. Here, this LPG is mixed with the atmospheric air, and this air and LPG mixture is fed into the engine. So engine is mentioned here as a dotted line. So this is how a petrol fueled vehicle is converted to a LPG fueled vehicle. These are the kits. So this fuel line and this vacuum filter, this regulator, and this carburetor. So these are the components involved in this alternator kit. So alternator in the sense we are going to alter this petrol fueled vehicle to the LPG fueled vehicle. And for ethanol, so in case of ethanol, if we are going to use ethanol in conventional engines, so what are the modifications we have to go for? So carburetor should be manually adjusted in order to compensate air fuel mixture. As carburetor in petrol engines is designed for the petrol standards, we have to adjust it manually for the sake of using bioethanol. So fuel filters should be changed frequently. The fuel filters. So fuel filter is mainly meant for, 1 minute, sorry for intervention. Is coming again. For bioethanol, we need to adjust the carburetor manually. As this carburetor is designed especially for petrols, we need to manually adjust this carburetor for the use of bioethanol. So in case of bioethanol, the fuel filter should be frequently changed. So which means the fuel is having more contaminants. So the contaminant should be filtered before it is feed into the ICE engines. So we need to change the fuel filters frequently in case of bioethanol. So cold starting. So this term. So what is meant by cold starting? Before getting into this cold starting, so we should know about latent heat of evaporation. So the latent heat of evaporation is nothing but the minimum temperature of a fuel required to evaporate. So that property is called latent heat of evaporation. So this latent heat of evaporation of ethanol is high. So we need somewhat more temperature to evaporate the ethanol. So in case of winter, if the latent heat of evaporation is high, the vehicle would struggle to start. So that problem is called as cold starting. So if you use ethanol, as this ethanol is having high latent heat of evaporation, there will be a problem of cold starting. In order to rectify this cold starting, we have to add additives. Or we need a small petrol tank beside this ethanol tank. So we can use this small petrol tank to ignite the engine, and then we can continue with ethanol. So this problem, cold starting, is having cold starting is a major problem while using ethanol. And we need to modify the cylinder walls, cylinder heads, piston rings, intake manifolds of conventional engine design. So the cylinder wall, this point. So I need to highlight this. So this point is the major point we have to consider in case of using bioethanol. So a nickel plating. So a nickel plating should be done in the cylinder valves, as alcohol, ethanol is having high erosion properties. It's having a capacity to erode metals. So a nickel plating should be done, or nickel coating should be given to the cylinder valves in order to uh, prevent the erosion made by ethanol. And for biodiesel and hydrogen, so we need, in case of biodiesel, we need to replace the rubber seals. So rubber seals, where we could find these seals. So in fuel line, we can see these rubber seals. From in fuel line, we are using rubber seals in case of petrol and diesel engines. If you use biodiesel, this biodiesel would react with this rubber seals, and which make that seal or which would damage the rubber seals. So we have to uh, modify these rubber seal in case of biodiesel usage. So cold starting again, as we see in ethanol, so biodiesel is also having this cold starting problem. So in order to rectify this, we have to add some additives. Additives is nothing but we have to add some chemicals to start the vehicle. And oil changing. If you are using biodiesel of blends more than 20%, which means B20. So B20 is 20% of biodiesel blend. If you are using more than 20% of bio blends, which means if you are using B85 or B100, frequent oil changing should be done in engines. And in case of hydrogen, so hydrogen is having low ignition temperature, as hydrogen, as we seen in a hydrogen topic itself, the temperature required to ignite the hydrogen is low, very low. So and it's highly flammable. So the engine modification should be in a way to prevent the backflash. So backflash, we know about backflash. So the tendency of hydrogen to capture the fire easily, and even inside the track, transfer track. So that property is called as backflash. So the engine should be modified in order to prevent the backflash. So in order to prevent this backflash, a disc-shaped combustion chamber is designed to reduce the inlet spill. So inlet spill in the sense, once hydrogen is fed into the combustion chamber, there will be a spill during the upward and downward motion of the piston inside the chamber. It will cause a spill of the fed fuel inside the chamber in case of compression. So a disc-shaped combustion chamber reduces the inlet spill. So we need to remodify the conventional design of a combustion chamber into a disc-shaped combustion chamber in case of hydrogen. So these are all the major engine modifications we have to go for using these alternate fuels in conventional petrol or diesel engines. And this is the last topic and most important topic in this alternate fuels. What are the performance and emission characteristics of alternate fuels? We had came across a lot of alternate fuels in these previous slides. So here we are going to see what are the performance and emission properties of these alternate fuels. So first we are seeing ethanol, so alcohol based alternate fuel. So what will be the performance? We can get same power, same acceleration, same payload. Payload in the sense, so each and every vehicle manufacturer should claim a vehicle can bear this much of load for this fuel conditions. So we can get the same power, same acceleration, and same payload like conventional fuels in case if we use ethanol. So octane number of ethanol is very high. So in case of high octane number, we know that engine knocking is low. So the energy efficiency is high in case of ethanol. So as it's having a tendency to absorb moisture, it will prevent fuel from freezing. So in case of winter, it will prevent fuel from freezing. So it's more volatile than petrol. So volatile, it's a property of getting vaporized. A fuel, how easy a fuel is getting vaporized. That property is called as volatility. So it's more volatile than petrol. As we know, alcohols is more volatile liquid. And emission property. So carbon monoxide reduction is 40%. It's monoxide emission is reduced by 40% when compared to the conventional fuels. In case of particulates, that will be 20% reduction, and NOx emission, that will be 10% of reduction, and for sulfate, that will be 80% of reduction when compared to the conventional fuels. And for LPG and biodiesel. So for LPG, propane powered LPG with high octane number reduces engine knocking. As we see in LPG topic itself, so Americans use 80% of propane powered LPG vehicles, as it's having octane number of 110, which should reduce engine knocking. So a complete combustion is possible. Complete combustion in the sense 100% of combustion is possible if you use LPG. So there will be negligible carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and hydrocarbon emissions in case of LPGs. And for biodiesel, the performance, the same payload, horsepower, torque, fuel economy. Fuel economy is nothing but how much quantity of fuel an engine uh, should occupy for per kilometer. So that is called as fuel economy is near equal to the conventional fuel. So if you use biodiesel, we can get the same amount of payload, horsepower, torque, fuel economy as equal to the conventional fuel. In case of B100 blend, for pure biodiesel blend, there will be a huge heavy cold start problem when compared to B20 blend, right? So these are all the performance of biodiesel, and here the emission. So here emission, I have given a table which is distinguishing B20 blend and a B100 blend. So here we are considering the major emissions: carbon monoxide, particulates, hydrocarbons, sulfates, and NOx. In case of while comparing B20 blend and B100 blend, so carbon monoxide emission is 10% when compared to conventional fuel. Here we can get 50% when compared to conventional fuel like petrol or diesel. For particulates, we are getting 15% of reduction here, while here we are getting 70% of reduction. Hydrocarbon, we are getting 10% of reduction, but here we are getting 40% of reduction when compared to conventional petrol or diesel. And here sulfates, we are getting 20% of reduction, but here we are getting 100% of sulfates. That I think, which refers there will be no sulfate emission if you are using B100, which means B100 blend. So NOx emission, we are getting 2% reduced NOx, but here we are getting 9% reduced NOx. While comparing B20 blend and B100 blend, so B100 blend is looking far better than B20 blend. But the major problem is we are getting heavy cold start problem in case of using B100 blend in winter season. So we are probably going for B20 blend in as an alternate for diesel engines. So in case of hydrogen, so if you are using hydrogen, so what are the major modifications we have to undergo in conventional engine designs? So as the thermal efficiency is greater than petrol, here we are seeing about performance and emission only. So the thermal efficiency of hydrogen is greater when compared to petrol. So power output, even it's having a greater thermal efficiency than petrol. Hydrogen will give a lower power output when compared to the petrol. So this power output can be improved with the help of adding or installing supercharger or turbocharger in the engine. So in hydrogen, we have seen already there will be a negligible amount of carbon monoxide, hydrocarbon, and carbon dioxide emissions. As hydrogen is combusted, we can get two major products. One is water, and another one is NOx. In this two products, NOx emission is somewhat harmful to the environment. So these are all the performance and emission characteristics of hydrogen. So with this, we are concluding this topic, alternate fuels. So we have seen a lot of alternate fuels, 5 to 6 types of alternate fuels, their introduction, their brief introduction, their preparation. So how we are feeding these alternate fuels into the conventional ICE engines, and we had seen their performance and emission characteristics, and we had seen what all the necessary modification required in conventional engines in order to use these alternate fuels. So with this, I'm ending this video lecture with some important university questions. So these are all the major important university questions that our university could probably ask in semester examinations. So I had given 10 set of important university questions in this slide. So I hope this video lecture would clear, would give a brief idea about different types of alternate fuels that we can use in petrol and diesel engines, or we can alter the conventional fuels with these alternate fuels. And you got, I hope you got some brief idea and a thought about usage of alternate fuels in society. So which will improve the emission characteristics, which will improving emission characteristics in the sense reduction of emissions, which would be eco-friendly and societal friendly and human friendly. So you could now I hope you could predict what kind of alternate fuel you can use for different types of engines, and what would be the modification you have to go prior using this alternate fuel in the ICE engine. So thank you for paying your attention. And if you are having any inquiries, sorry, if you are having any queries, and if you are having any doubts ending up this while ending up this video lecture, just contact me through WhatsApp or through my mobile number. I'm ready, and I'm readily available to solve your queries. So thank you for watching.